I thought I was cursed. 92 job interviews. 92 rejections. And every single time, employers loved me, until the final stage. Then suddenly, silence. Cold emails. We've decided to move in another direction. I spent 4 years believing something was wrong with me. Until one CEO secretly recorded a phone call with my parents. And exposed the reason my life kept collapsing. My name is Nathan Cole. I'm 29 years old, and for most of my life, my parents controlled me through fear disguised as concern. To outsiders, they looked perfect. My father was a respected high school principal. My mother worked in pediatric counseling. People described them as wise, protective, loving. At home? They monitored everything. My grades. My passwords. My friendships. Even my emotions. If I disagreed with them, I was unstable. If I got angry, I was ungrateful. And if I succeeded independently? That was dangerous. Because independence meant losing control over me. I didn't understand that growing up. I just thought my parents were strict. When I got accepted into one of the best engineering programs in the state, my father hugged me proudly in front of relatives. Then later that night he quietly said, "Don't start thinking you're smarter than your family." That sentence stayed in my head for years. Every achievement somehow became arrogance. Every step forward became betrayal. Still, I worked hard. I graduated near the top of my class. Internships loved me. Professors recommended me constantly. I thought adulthood would finally free me. Instead, it became worse. The first job interview I lost hurt badly. The 10th crushed my confidence. By the 40th, I started wondering if I was secretly unemployable. The pattern always looked identical. The interviews went amazing. Recruiters smiled. Managers praised my qualifications. Some companies even verbally hinted I was their top choice. Then suddenly everything changed after reference checks. At first, I assumed other candidates were simply better. But eventually, the rejections became bizarre. One hiring manager accidentally let something slip during a phone call. "Nathan," she said awkwardly, "you're clearly talented, but we're concerned about emotional reliability." I froze. What does that mean? Long silence. Then, "I'm sorry. I shouldn't say more." Click. My stomach dropped. Emotional reliability? Where was that coming from? I didn't party. I had no criminal history. No workplace conflicts. Nothing. Then one night, after rejection number 63, I confronted my parents during dinner. "Have either of you spoken to employers behind my back?" My mother looked genuinely offended. "Nathan, how could you ask us that?" Dad shook his head disappointedly. "Maybe companies sense your paranoia." Paranoia. That word again. My parents loved that word. Anytime I questioned something uncomfortable, suddenly I was paranoid. Too emotional. Overreacting. Eventually, I stopped telling them where I applied. But somehow, it kept happening. 92 interviews. 4 years. My savings disappeared completely. Friends started building careers while I worked temporary gigs and slept in my childhood bedroom. The humiliation ate me alive. Then came the interview that changed everything. A tech company in Seattle called Helix Dynamics. Not huge, but respected. And their CEO, Elena Ramirez, interviewed candidates personally. The interview went perfectly. Actually, better than perfectly. Elena and I talked for nearly 2 hours about systems design, automation, future infrastructure ideas. She seemed genuinely excited. At the end, she smiled and said, "I think you'd be a phenomenal fit here." For the first time in years, I let myself feel hope. Big mistake. 2 days later, Elena emailed asking for a final discussion over video call. The second the call started, I knew something was wrong. She looked serious. Concerned. "Nathan," she said carefully, "I need to ask you something strange." My chest tightened instantly. "Okay. Why did your father call me yesterday?" I felt like the air left the room. "What?" "He said he was concerned about your mental stability." Everything inside me went cold. Apparently, my father somehow found the company contact information and called Elena directly. And according to him, I was emotionally unstable, obsessive, socially unpredictable, and prone to delusional thinking under pressure. I couldn't speak. I genuinely couldn't speak. Then Elena said something that changed my life. "Your father didn't know our compliance department automatically records executive calls." Silence. My hand started shaking. "Recorded. Everything recorded." Elena looked at me carefully. "Nathan, I don't think you're the problem here." I broke down crying immediately. Not graceful crying. Years of humiliation exploding out of me all at once. Because suddenly everything made sense. All 92 interviews. All those confused rejection emails. All those final stage collapses. My parents were sabotaging me. The people who were supposed to help me succeed were secretly destroying every chance I had to escape them. Then came twist number 1. Elena forwarded the recording to me privately. I listened alone in my apartment that night. And honestly, it was worse than I imagined. My father sounded calm. Professional. Convincing. "I'm only calling because Nathan hides his episodes very well." Episodes. I started shaking violently. Then my mother joined the call. Actually joined it. "I worked in child psychology for years," she said gently. "He can appear charming initially, but prolonged stress causes instability." Instability. They sounded rehearsed. Like they'd done this before. And suddenly I realized something horrifying. They probably had. 4 years. Maybe all 92 times. Then came the sentence that destroyed me. Dad laughed softly and said, "We're his parents. We know him better than anyone." I turned the recording off and threw up in the bathroom. Because deep down, some part of me still believed parents couldn't truly hate their own child's independence that much. I was wrong. The next morning, I confronted them. I drove home shaking with rage. My mother opened the door smiling. "Nathan?" I played the recording immediately. Her face lost all color. Dad went silent. The calm silence of someone calculating damage. Then he said, "You don't understand the full situation." I almost laughed. "What situation justifies ruining my life?" My mother started crying instantly. "You weren't ready." "For what?" "To leave us," she screamed. That sentence froze the entire room. And suddenly the truth finally surfaced. My parents didn't sabotage me because they thought I'd fail. They sabotaged me because they were terrified I'd succeed without them. Then twist number 2 hit harder. My Aunt Diane called me secretly that night after hearing about the confrontation. "Nathan," she whispered, "there's something you don't know." Apparently, years earlier, my older brother Caleb tried leaving home too. I barely remembered Caleb because he moved out when I was 10. My parents always claimed he became selfish and abandoned the family. That wasn't true. According to Aunt Diane, Caleb discovered our parents sabotaging his college transfer opportunities decades earlier. And when he confronted them, they cut him off emotionally and rewrote the story to relatives. I sat there stunned. "You mean they did this before?" "Yes," she whispered. "You were never supposed to leave either." Then she gave me Caleb's number. I hadn't spoken to my brother in 19 years. When he answered the phone, the first thing he said was, "So they finally did it to you too." I started crying instantly. Caleb listened quietly while I explained everything. Then he said something that shattered me completely. "Nathan, they don't love dependency. They love control. Control. Not protection. Not concern. Control." Then came the final explosion. Elena asked if I'd allow Helix Dynamics legal department to investigate because my parents' interference potentially violated hiring laws and corporate liability policies. At first, I hesitated. Because despite everything, they were still my parents. But then I thought about the years they stole from me. The confidence they destroyed. The depression. The humiliation. 92 interviews. So I agreed. And the investigation uncovered something horrifying. My parents had created fake email accounts pretending to be former mentors and references. For years. They sent unsolicited warnings to employers anytime they discovered I was close to getting hired. Some messages claimed I struggled with aggression. Others implied substance abuse. One even suggested psychiatric hospitalization. All lies. Calculated lies. And because my father was an educator and my mother worked in counseling, employers trusted them. The final confrontation happened during mediation with Helix's attorneys present. I'll never forget my father's face when the evidence folders hit the table. Printed emails. Call recordings. IP address matches. Everything. My mother broke first. Sobbing uncontrollably. "We were scared," she cried. "Of what?" I asked quietly. Dad finally snapped. "Of losing you." The room went silent. Then he said the ugliest truth of all. "You were the only thing keeping this family together." That sentence explained my entire life. I wasn't their son emotionally. I was glue. Purpose. Control. And the second I tried becoming my own person, they destroyed me to keep me trapped. Helix eventually hired me anyway. Not out of pity. Elena looked me directly in the eyes and said, "The fact you survived this and still kept going tells me more about your character than any resume ever could." I moved to Seattle 3 weeks later. Changed my number. Started therapy. Started breathing again. And my parents? The recordings leaked during legal proceedings connected to corporate complaints. Not publicly online. But enough. My father quietly resigned from his principal position within 6 months. My mother lost credibility at her counseling practice after questions surfaced about ethics and manipulation. The reputations they weaponized against me collapsed under the truth. And the strangest part? I didn't feel revenge. I felt grief. Because no matter how much someone hurts you, there's still something horrifying about realizing your own parents feared your freedom more than they wanted your happiness. Today, I'm 33. I lead engineering operations for a company I once thought would reject me like all the others. Sometimes I still think about those 92 interviews. 92 rooms where people saw potential in me. Until my parents taught them to see danger instead. But one CEO listened carefully enough to notice something was wrong. One person recorded the truth. And honestly, that recording didn't just expose my parents. It gave me my life back.